We all have this sort of map of the world in our heads, right? We have a gut feeling for how big things are, how far apart they are, basically where everything fits. But what if I told you that mental map? Well, it's probably got some surprisingly huge holes in it. So let's start poking at that map right now.
Okay, let's kick things off with a question that sounds pretty simple, but maybe it's not. Just think about it for a second. You've got this massive continent, an entire country, Australia. And then you've got the moon, that giant glowing rock up in the sky. One feels, right here, and the other feels impossibly far away. So which one do you think is wider?
And the answer, believe it or not, is Australia. And it's not even all that close. From its east coast to its west coast, Australia stretches almost 4,000 kilometers. The moon, on the other hand, its diameter is just 3,476 kilometers. That's a difference of over 500 kilometers. It's one of those facts that just kind of breaks your brain a little, doesn't it?
So if our intuition can be that wrong about something we can literally see in the sky almost every single night, what else are we getting wrong? Let's dig a little deeper into our planet's true scale and try to put things in a bit of a cosmic perspective.
It turns out the moon isn't the only celestial body our home continent has beat. Get this, Australia is also significantly wider than the famous dwarf planet Pluto. We tend to think of any planet as just being enormous, but the scales here are really, really deceptive.
Just look at that number. Pluto's diameter is just under 2,400 kilometers. That's barely 60% of the width of Australia. You could almost drive from Sydney to Perth and you'd have traveled a much greater distance than the entire diameter of Pluto. Crazy.
And seeing it all laid out like this, well, the difference is just undeniable, isn't it? Australia, a single country on our little blue planet, is wider than both the moon and Pluto. The really crucial thing to take away here is that our built-in sense of cosmic scale is often just completely and totally distorted. Okay, so from cosmic scale, let's zoom all the way back in, right here to Earth. We've talked about the scale of objects, but what about the scale of distance, of pure isolation? Where do you think is the single loneliest, most remote spot on our entire planet? Well, it's a place called Point Nemo. Its official name is the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility, which is a very fancy way of saying it's the spot in the ocean that is mathematically, provably, the absolute farthest you can get from any piece of dry land. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that distance. To get to the nearest coastline from Point Nemo, you would have to travel 2,688 kilometers in any direction. That is an incredible, almost incomprehensible level of isolation, right in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean. And this fact is just my favorite. When the International Space Station flies overhead, the astronauts on board are actually the closest human beings to anyone who might be at Point Nemo. They're about 400 kilometers up, while the nearest person on Earth is over 2,600 kilometers away. The closest people to you aren't even on the planet. And because it's so incredibly remote, it's actually been given a second, pretty wild job. It's the world's designated spacecraft graveyard. Space agencies intentionally aim their old decommissioned satellites to crash right here, far away from people and shipping lanes. And yep, in 2031, this is where the massive International Space Station is scheduled to make its final fiery dive. All right, so we've done massive scale, we've done extreme isolation. How about a total baffling absence of something? Let's move from geographical extremes to a really surprising biological one. Think about it for a sec. Its neighbors, places like Greenland and Scandinavia, are just buzzing with mosquitoes in the summer. But there is one country, right there in the region, that has somehow managed to stay almost entirely mosquito-free. Any ideas? The answer is Iceland. Yeah. Despite having tons of lakes and ponds that look like they'd be a perfect mosquito paradise, the pesky insects just can't seem to get a foothold there. It's a real ecological oddity. So why is that? Well, the main reason is Iceland's unbelievably unpredictable climate. See, mosquitoes need a consistent amount of time to develop in cold water before a thaw lets them hatch. But Iceland's weather is just all over the place, with these sudden freezes and thaws happening at random. It just completely wrecks their life cycle. They simply can't time it right to survive. So, from a place famous for what it doesn't have, let's pivot to a place defined by an insane abundance of something else: lakes. You might think you know which country has the most, but the reality is just staggering. So, if we look at lakes that are bigger than 25 acres, you can see the top three. The US comes in third, Russia's in second place. But just look at the number for first place. It's not just a little bit ahead, it's on a completely different planet. Here it is. This is the key statistic that just blows my mind. Canada is home to 62% of all the world's large lakes. Not 6.2%, 62%. That is more than every other country on Earth combined. And when you see it like this, wow, the visual just puts it into this wild perspective. The next time you look at a world map, just try to picture that huge blue slice. Most of the world's significant bodies of fresh water are tucked away inside the borders of just one country.
So we've seen that a continent is wider than the moon, that the loneliest place on Earth is also a spacecraft graveyard, and that one country has basically cornered the market on lakes. Why does learning this stuff actually matter? Well, because these aren't just fun facts for trivia night. Think of them like tools. They show us that our gut feelings about size and scale are often way off. They prove that simple, hard data can reveal a world that is so much stranger and more wonderful than we usually imagine. Every little fact like this chips away at our assumptions and helps reshape that mental map into something a little closer to reality. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Learning something like Australia is wider than the moon should make you curious, right? It should make you ask yourself, what other things that I take for granted, things that seem completely obvious, are actually totally and wonderfully wrong?